I'm on my third week on my study plan, and honestly, the 3 weeks that I've been doing the plan has been a lot more successful than my own studying from a textbook within 1 month. So it's been going really well. Um, I do realize that there are some weak points that I have, and that's why I booked the call because I saw that email and I was like, yeah, I could benefit from that for sure.
Cool. Yeah, happy to help. I'd love to learn more about where you're at, what those weak points are. Broadly speaking, right now, where would you say you're scoring?
So the last practice test I was actually before the schedule, which was 150. I haven't done a full practice test yet, but I've just done like sections.
Okay, so you were at a 150,
Mhm.
just kind of taking those sections, and then what would be your ultimate dream outcome or goal for your score?
So the goal is 170 at least.
170. Okay, so we're looking for roughly a 150 to a 170, 20 points, with the caveat that the 150 was not a full sitting, it was individual sections. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how much time do you have till test day? How many months are we looking at?
So I'm taking the test in June. It's about 2-ish months.
Okay, so 2.5 or so months
Mhm.
till the test in June. And then what else do you have going on? Are you working? Are you in school? Any other obligations?
I work full time.
Okay, so how many hours a week would you say you're able to put into your prep over the next 2.5 months or so?
So consistently right now, 3 hours a day, with 1 day break being Sunday.
Okay, so 2, 3 hours a day, maybe 5, 6 days a week.
Hmm.
So we're looking at, was that like 10, 15 hours overall?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say is your weakest section or question type on the test?
So I would say flaw seems to be my weakest point, and I think the overall issue I've been having is just understanding that stimulus to its core. I find that I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, I kind of get it, so I'm just going to go to the questions and go from there. But the understanding I have of the stimulus is not great. So then I'm like taking more time, like reading the answers. I'm having difficulties like um, crossing out like the wrong answers. So that's where I'm getting real caught up.
Okay, so the issue being understanding the stimulus fully, having
Hmm.
a clear picture of what that flaw is before going into the choices. And as a result of that lack of understanding, it's taking too much time. So it's an
Yes.
accuracy issue compounding into a timing issue also.
Yeah.
Okay. And would you feel like your study plan right now is structured for what you need, or are you feeling like you're not following the plan, or are you sticking with it?
So I am sticking with it. Definitely some days like I'll complete a full section and then I'll go to the next one so I can, get more. But some days I'm like, okay, well, I'm a little busy, so I'm just gonna do maybe 2 lines and then tomorrow I'll finish it off.
Right. Okay. So you're doing a little bit. Some days maybe catching up another day if you have to, but
Yes.
overall you're trying to follow the plan.
Hmm.
Okay. And I saw that you're reviewing your mistakes. Well, that's great. We'll talk about that more in a bit. What about tracking progress? Do you feel like you have a system for tracking your accuracy overall, changes over time?
I think the only real um, tracking I'm doing is through like Law Hub and just the notes that I'm writing. I think I'm very focused on like what I'm getting wrong rather than seeing that improvement, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So you're just kind of, the Law Hub is capturing what you're answering relative to the right answer. If there's ever a discrepancy between the two, and then so you're seeing that would be the place where you're looking at, okay, here's my practice test scores over time or my accuracy over time.
And I'll go back to the type of question and I'll say, okay, like where did I go wrong? What could I do better? And I try my best to like retain that information and put it towards the next type of question.
Right. Okay. Good. So the review document, it sounds, is more where you are looking to get those insights from what you're getting wrong to try to avoid making the same mistakes again.
Yeah, because I find that I'm a little bit of a slower learner, but once I get it, then it's like, okay, I fully understand. It's just getting there is a little bit of a battle for me.
Okay, so we've got to give you the clarity on making sure that you understand exactly what you're getting wrong and why. What is that key takeaway and insight? Once you slow down and capture that, then you can avoid making the same mistake again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now aside from flaw questions, are there any other question types or concepts that you feel a little shaky on that might deserve more attention?
So definitely those like strengthen and weaken questions where it says um, if it's true, then like bringing in that new information um, is a little bit of a struggle for me, just because sometimes I'll think, okay, this is a weakened question. I need to find whatever weakens it from the stimulus. I don't really think about, oh, like how can new information be pulled in to weaken this? And that's where I
Okay,
get
so
caught up.
yeah, right. Okay, so just building that habit of recognizing based on this question type, it's okay to bring in new information. Let me fully consider what the implication or impact of that new information would be on the argument in the stimulus.
And that's where I'm kind of lacking because I'm like, okay, I don't fully understand the stimulus. How can I understand what new information can weaken this stimulus?
Right. Okay, so I'm trying to capture here and sum up what are the action steps or items we should talk about now. So we've got,
Okay.
of course, flaw questions as one big area. You mentioned those first and foremost. Then there's question types where we bring in new information like strengthen and weaken.
Yeah.
We might also add to that, say, resolve the paradox, for example, or sufficient assumption, where
Yes.
we have to consider the choices because there's a whole family of question types where we're bringing in new information, strengthen and weaken, of course, being the most obvious. So flaw, strengthen, weaken, others in that category.
Yes.
We have the question of making sure that your review process is fully giving you the key insights so that you are extracting the full value out of the questions that you get wrong or have difficulty with, that you are learning the lesson.
Yes, exactly.
And all of this to serve the end of getting you to a 170 in the next 2.5 months, considering that we're looking for roughly a 20-point increase. I'll be honest, maybe a little bit more than that, just because 4 sections added up together do not really make a full exam because we have to consider pacing and endurance on top of accuracy.
Yeah.
All right, so the first place I want to start here is around what I mentioned earlier, progress tracking. I asked you earlier, are we tracking the trends in your accuracy over time? So I'd want to look at, just say, if it's possible for you, for every, say, 20, 30 questions that you get wrong, even if you're drilling them by type, can you capture the data of what is my accuracy percentage? Is it 60%? Is it 80%? Is it above those? Is it below those? Are we seeing progress in accuracy over time? Because at a certain point, it could be, say, 75% accuracy. Maybe at that point, you want to start doing timed work more.
Okay.
Of course, in an ideal world, we wait till we were at 100%, but we have the real reality of the calendar in front of us, right? So, broadly speaking, LSAT prep, 3 phases: accuracy, pacing, endurance. At a certain point, we're going to want to move you into pacing, doing individual timed sections, then finally pulling it all together with full-length timed exams. And without the data, we don't know where you are today, even relative to where you were last week or in general. So we got to know this week you're here versus where you were before. Is it trending upward? If so, if not, what do we need to shift? The second big thing is flaw questions. So you mentioned there's flaw questions, and then separately, the questions around if true, new information in the choices. Flaw is one of the most questioned types, so I would start there. That's going to be a higher yield area, just because along with necessary assumption and inference, flaw is one of the most common types. So first step is make sure you're crystal clear on all the classic logical fallacies. That's a gimme, that's low-hanging fruit. So correlation, causation, confusing necessary and sufficient, ad hominem, circular reasoning, gambler's fallacy. There's a dozen or so of them. We have lessons on them inside the course.
Right.
I would start there, just do some refreshers on those. Even just watching a handful of the lesson videos on those, it will get you caught up a bit, and that should give you a quick, easy boost because you'll recognize those faster. That's not comprehensive, of course. There are just flaws where they fail to consider something, and so keeping that open mind. Somewhat analogous to new information. So what do they fail to consider? They fail to consider that it is possible that XYZ could be true, and that would have an impact.
Yeah, I guess too, like a piece that I have is that the sequence, like starting the question and going through, okay, let me break down the stimulus. That's where I'm kind of lost too. So I think I just need to learn how to break down the stimulus in my own way to understand it, and then I can focus on the fallacies and keep my mind open on, okay, what's happening.
Yeah. And so that's a fundamental building block. I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually going to cut across all the question types is, can we slow it down a little bit? What's the conclusion? What's the evidence? What's the method of reasoning? So how do they get from evidence to conclusion? And then how is it possible for the evidence, which of course is given, to be true, yet for the conclusion to be false?
Right.
So we problematize the conclusion. We consider, okay, well, what did they fail to consider that would allow the conclusion to not follow? Or from the necessary assumption lens, what did they not bother to explicitly state, which would be the underlying necessary assumption?
Yeah, and I always think to myself, because I really enjoyed the way Judy was doing her classes, and she always mentions like slowing down is speeding up, or however she said it. And yeah, that really, I need to slow down a bit more and consider what I'm reading instead of just focusing on the questions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to understand what the stimulus says because the choices only make sense in the context of the stimulus. If you don't understand the stimulus, then reading the choices is not going to help. It's actually going to hurt because you're just throwing more information at yourself and you don't have a bucket to put it in.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's actually something I'd want to bring in when we talk about your review process is, can we make sure that you understand what was the stimulus saying? Can we paraphrase that? Can we summarize it? Put it in your own words.
Yeah.
And then conclusion versus evidence versus what is the gap.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to break it down. Okay.
And then for strengthen and weaken and others of that type, we want to be thinking about, okay, big picture here, let me think for a moment. A big picture here, doesn't matter how ridiculous it is, what would be the consequence of this new information if it were true? If we took all 5 answer choices as given, like they were part of the stimulus, which of them would have this particular impact? And if you're having a hard time with that, you can always just prephrase. Make your own prediction. What do I think might strengthen this argument or weaken this argument? And then you can see if one of the choices lines up with your prediction. Ideally, it will. It won't always, but it could. And that might help you think more outside the box.
Yeah, definitely prephrase has helped me a lot. I didn't even think of doing it before, and sometimes I'll prephrase the right answer. I'm like, oh wow, saved me like 5 minutes.
That's magic, right? Yeah, okay. So I want to take a look now, just dive into your review document that you shared. All right, so we have here your Preface 101 error log, section 1, reading comp. You're taking some handwritten notes here around the passage. So the policy capturing differs from the approach described in the last 2 sentences. Incorrect answer, correct answer. Okay, so is this a fairly typical or standard for how you tend to take these notes?
Yeah, I usually kind of justify why I chose the wrong answer and then justify why the right answer is the right answer.
Okay, cool. And how are you finding that? Do you feel like you're getting the key takeaways or insights from this process?
Yeah, I think I better understand why the answer is correct and like the frame of mind I was in when I chose the wrong answer. Yeah, definitely it does help.
How soon after you take a section do you engage in the review?
Right after.
Right after. Okay, so same study session
Yes.
immediately afterwards. Okay, awesome. That's good. So timing is important. That way you're fresh on what you were thinking in the moment.
Hmm.
Okay, that's good. And when you're taking these notes, so tell me about the different colors. I see here you have like your black, pink, green.
Yeah, so black would be like the question that I chose and the correct answer, and then the pink would be the wrong answer that I chose, and then the green would be the reason for the right answer.
Okay. And then is there a separate, like a key takeaway or insight section? Like the lesson learned?
No,
Okay.
that would be
That might be
helpful.
something to add into the mix, yeah? So if you're saying to me that, like, if I slowed, you said earlier, if I slow down and I really get the key insight, then I've got it. And
Hmm.
that is a lesson I can carry forward to next time.
Yeah.
Now it's looking like your process for review is pretty consistent from question to question. Just like in my like caveman looking at this, like okay, we have black, pink, green. We have
Hmm.
black. Then this one was a little different because you're kind of. Oh, tell me about this. So here you have like the little markings
So this
around
was
here.
my attempt to kind of diagram the question because it
Okay.
was yeah, the most similar reasoning, and then I just diagrammed the wrong answer I chose, and then the right answer, and then the passage at the bottom there, and yeah, I just it was a little all over the place, but I found out that the correct answer had the same XYZ
Mm-hmm.
diagramming as the passage.
Okay. Cool. So that's a good note to take. It's a good okay. You understood the logic at the end of the day, but
Yeah,
I wonder how long does that take?
too long.
Yeah. So that's the thing that the XYZ ABC sort of stuff. It's good for logic. It's good for after the fact with untimed work, but in timed conditions, I'm not sure how practical it is.
Right.
So I might try to form a more general articulation as if it were a principle,
Hmm.
rather than engaging in the symbolic logic.
Yeah, I think a class I had with Lauren, she actually didn't, she did a similar question to this, and the way she formulated it was like not using a diagram or anything, but looking at the keywords like the conditional words or like do not, and it made sense. Like I can't verbalize it, but it made sense the way she did it, and it was quick. So I think I'll
Mm-hmm.
review that in the vault and keep
Great. Yeah, I mean
drilling
that's
that.
yeah. So that sort of verbalization is definitely possible, and it's worth taking that extra time to do it because it'll save you time in the long run. So it comes in line with slowing down, understanding the stimulus, putting it in your own words and paraphrasing, and then forming that generalized abstraction as a principle. You
Yeah,
then apply it through the choices, looking for one that follows that similar shape of logic.
right, right.
But anyway, I was going to circle back to say, okay, you have a consistent process of like the black text for the wrong and the right, the pink text for the wrong answer, the green text for the takeaway. So that's all good, but I would add in there maybe another color if you want to do that for the takeaways.
Okay.
Now, there are pros and cons to doing notes by hand versus typing.
Hmm.
The pro of handwriting is that you process information better when you're writing things by hand just because you're using multiple senses to actually form the letters. So there's that tactile sensory input to your brain. The downside, though, is that it's not necessarily quite as templated and you can't copy paste quite as easily. I mean, you can upload your notes and do optical character recognition with ChatGPT pretty easily, actually, if you wanted to digitize this. My hope for you here is that at least the takeaways or the insights would be compiled in one central location rather than being the last 3 lines of each page. So that before you take a full practice test and before test day, you could quickly scan all your insights and takeaways as the reminders. Okay, like from this random reading comp passage I did 2 weeks ago, I learned XYZ. Or for that parallel question, I learned I don't want to do symbolic logic. I want to verbalize the principle.
Yeah, I definitely, one of the instructors talked about an Excel spreadsheet and just having everything laid out. And I think I might adopt that because, yeah, like having my notebooks, I'm like flipping through everything and not very organized. So yeah, that makes sense.
I hear you. I mean, like I'm a paper and pencil person too. I'm also beyond, if I'm not that, at least a Google Doc. But I think the sheets, like a Google sheet or an Excel sheet, has a lot to be said for it, just because it keeps everything structured clearly. When you're looking at a blank page, there's no template you're forced to follow. You're just kind of doing what comes out of your head stream of consciousness. But if there are certain key points you always want to hit, like a checklist, which is what we do with the Socratic review method, the sheet actually works really well because you have a dedicated column. Every single time this is what you do, or a dedicated row. Every single time this is what you do for every single LR question, for every single reading comp passage.
Yeah. I guess too, it forces me to like fill out those sections instead of just having, okay, right and wrong. That's good.
Exactly. So there's a lot to do beyond right and wrong. And then also even within wrong, you have why was it tempting initially? So in other words, why did I pick it in the moment? And then upon reflection, why is it wrong? For the right answer, what was unappealing about it at first glance and what ultimately makes it correct?
Right.
Then you can also say, paraphrase the stimulus as part of your review. Or you can even paraphrase a reading comp passage as a drill or an exercise. You could rewrite the entire thing. You're not going to do that every single time, of course, but in some cases, depending on the topic or if it becomes an area of focus, you could do that.
Right.
So in terms of action items here, based on what you've shared, I'm thinking, 1, you track your progress in terms of accuracy. If you're at that stage right now where you're just drilling questions, track your accuracy week by week or in sets of 30 questions, for example. Then secondly, flaw questions, review the fundamental classic logical fallacies. We have lessons in the course on this. For strengthen, weaken, and others of the if true category, you engage in pre-phrasing or predictions just to practice thinking outside the box and bringing in new information. And then the review process here. So maybe adopting a spreadsheet or at least having a templated checklist that you follow. So you could tape that on your wall in front of your desk, or you could keep it to the side. And then every time you dive into your notebook, even if you're handwriting things, you're saying, I do stimulus, STEM, why the wrong answer was tempting, why was it wrong, why the right answer was right, why was it unappealing. And then as a separate thing, since you mentioned it, just like the building blocks of the stimulus, you could, for any question literally, you could break down, okay, what's the conclusion, what's the evidence, what's the gap, how is it possible for the evidence to be true, yet for the conclusion to be false.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. I think I definitely appreciate just like the sequence of like things to do because sometimes I'm just like I'm just gonna jump into it and hope for the best.
Yeah, no, if you take a little bit of extra time up front, you can get that much more out of your studying just in terms of efficiency.
Right.
Because you've laid the groundwork, so you have the proper structure to get more out of your studying. And so especially when you're looking to go from a 150 ballpark up to a 170, 20 points, 2.5 months, you've got to have a plan in place. Otherwise, you run the risk at least of spinning your wheels and burning through practice material. And by the way, I'll just note this as a side thing, as a little bonus for you. You mentioned Prep Test 101. I see Prep Test 101 error log on the notebook, or is that where you're starting?
Yeah, that was where I started back in like February, January.
Okay. So we have 101 to 158, 58 numbered exams plus a handful of drill sets and whatnot. You might not want to start off with, where are you now? I'll ask this. Where are you now, prep test wise?
Prep test wise, the other day I did 116.
Okay. 116. So that's a little more recent. I would think about maybe up, jumping ahead a bit to more recent exams, just because more recent means more relevant. The test has evolved over time.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I wouldn't want you spending time on the teens and then never getting to the 50s.
Right, right. Oh yeah, that makes sense because they're newer. Hey.
They're newer, exactly. So if you've got, say, 10 weeks till your test and you're going to do two exams worth of material a week, hypothetically, one as an exam, one as practice sections or drills, you might only be able to do 138 to 158 and not even ever cover 101 to 137, and that's okay. But I'd rather you definitely get to the newest and not get to the oldest than vice versa.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense as well.
Cool. So that was just a little extra thing that came to mind.
Oh, thank you.
But of course, my pleasure. Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest takeaway or insight you got from our call today?
Definitely the taking track of my progress in terms of the accuracy. I think that will definitely help me understand like what I'm doing right and compared to like what I'm doing wrong. And I think the breaking down the stimulus and asking myself those questions, the pre-phrasing, I think I will definitely take that away after today.